morning and welcome. Welcome friends, neighbors, New London citizens, community volunteers, elected officials. This is a wonderful second forum of the Housing Commission, and thank you for coming and expressing your ideas and opinions. And what is Paths Home? That's a logo that we developed to try and express what we needed to accomplish going forward with our HOP grant. It's a New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority grant of $103,000 to help us do planning and coordination, understand better who we are, and move forward to try to find some solutions from a regulatory standpoint. In June of 2024, we secured the HOP grant. It was a very valuable opportunity to do a deep study in demographics, land use patterns and regulations, and existing housing types. If you happen to notice on the screen when you came in, I ran around town taking pictures of existing houses and multifamily structures to give a sense of what we already have here. And it surprised me how many converted houses we have that are multifamily, how many structures could be converted to multifamily, and what opportunities exist not just in the Main Street area, but also out in the rural portion. So very, very interesting and enlightening for me to do that. We've been able, with this HOP grant, to hire our best-in-class consultants. I can tell you that because I looked long and hard for several years to find them. And with you, with them, we're going to do a very deep study, both inside and from the outside, as to how we can be better. Keys to success for this program are deep and broad study, learning as much as we can, that's why we have sessions like this, and comprehensive community engagement. This is your town. Your vote is what makes the difference. We need to take control of that and manage that. Please keep in mind that the housing commissioners, just like the planning board and select board members and elected officials, we're all volunteers, longtime residents appointed by the select board, and we are really only advisory to the planning board and the select board. We have no authority. Our job is to engage with you, to stimulate you, to help you think about what's good for the town, and then put that forth. We are not a housing authority. Oftentimes, that's a mistaken understanding. We don't have ability to develop housing. We don't have ability to manage housing. We simply become best in class, study what we can about housing, and work with you to resolve it. We also care about town character and the quality of life in town because we live here and we don't want it to damage it. We want to make it better. So sustainability for generations to come is really, really important. You may remember the three phases of the study in the HOP grant, the funding that we have today. There's the discovery phase, which we have been through. We are now in the visioning stage. We develop the facts and statistics and numbers and observations and key findings. Some of them are on the board at the very front, and of course they're on our webpage. But they gave us the facts to understand what we need to address. We're now in the visioning stage to look at those facts and those key findings and study and talk with you about some ideas as to what might work in our community. And that's what your roundtable discussions are for today. Very, very important. We're not making any decisions today. We are not voting on anything today. We are simply listening and capturing your ideas. At each one of your tables are a note taker who is going to try to collect any impressions and ideas and reactions. Please help the note taker to capture them because we will have them for a long time and they will be our guide. Can the note takers please just raise your hand quickly so we know who you are? Thank you. That's very helpful. In stage 3, we will take these ideas and work with the community to understand how we can engage further in changes that will help us grow in the right direction. We will seek different paths to meet the ideas and visions that are started today. It's really fitting that we're in a college dining hall. As I came in this morning, I thought, when I was in college millions of years ago, the dining room hall was a place where you sat with a friend or somebody you didn't know and you ate and you shared ideas. And you weren't really hindered by an awful lot of knowledge experience because you're still in college. So I want you to kind of take the veil away of too much pressure and reality and think a little bit outside the box. Engage in an open way with the people at the table and understand that there are ways that we can find possibilities. A question that's come up is, how are you going to deal with the issue of the water precinct and the challenges that the water precinct has? I'd like you to understand that what we're doing today goes beyond resolution of the water precinct matter. That's I don't mean to make light of it. It certainly is very, very important. But number one, we can't control it. Number two, we're thinking longer term than that, and that is one component of how our town could change. So I've attended a lot of water precinct meetings, maybe you have too. We're watching it, I'm watching it, you will too. But we can't just do zoning and reconsideration of town growth with respect to how the water issue will be resolved. It must be, but it's only one part. I would also add that if you're aware, the state legislature, both houses in the state legislature are working hard on housing legislation. And some of it is very, very onerous. It's hard for me to keep track of it all, but I can tell you the general trend is that they're taking away local control in some significant ways. Who knows what will pass? But I'm just telling you that sooner or later we may feel some of those mandated changes. So now is the time for us to do it on our own. Let's think hard, let's think outside the box, and give us your honest opinions of what could take place. With that, I'll turn it over to Steve Whitman, Resilience Planning and Design. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Peter. All right, so we're doing a lot of show of hands. So show of hands, if you were at Forum 1 in November. Wow, so this many people were at the first forum, that's excellent. If you were not at the first forum, all those materials are online. So the same nice folks that are filming for us today made a video, you can go back and see that. What's going to be different about this forum is we're not going to talk as much, and you're going to hopefully talk with each other quite a bit. So I just want to put you at ease with that. So this is a slide that you might remember from the first forum, and it really is the 5 takeaways that we had from the first phase. And so what we learned in that phase, and some of this we heard from some of you at the first forum, was, okay, we knew that, but we were able to actually give you some data that further explained why these were some of the trends that you're seeing. So a lack of diverse housing options. Most of the existing housing stock is large single-family units that don't accommodate an aging population or attract younger residents. That number 2, rising home prices. We're seeing that not just in New London, right? So median home sales price have surged dramatically, making the market increasingly competitive and out of reach for many potential buyers, particularly first-time homeowners. Vacancy rates. New London has a low inventory of homes for sale, properties selling quickly, signaling a strong demand for housing and highlighting the limited availability of homes in the area. A notable percentage of housing units are also vacant, primarily seasonally. That's been for a long time in New London. That's not a new thing, but we just have to share that. Aging housing stock. Much of the existing housing is older, with more than half of single-family homes being built before 1980. So older homes take more maintenance. We see a lot of beautiful homes here that are older and that are very well maintained. So if you have an older home, you're probably doing an excellent job. But it does take other resources. And then affordability challenges, lastly. And I can't read it from here. So not enough homes for people that maybe need to buy or rent lower in the inventory. And so some of those people work here in your community. They work at the hospital, they work at the town hall, they educate children in the community, and would like to live closer and participate in events like this. So this is a little bit about what we learned in the first phase. We also had a lot of feedback that we received from all of you who wrote on note cards. And we tried to address some of them, as you might remember at the November meeting. There were a lot of things we didn't have time for. And Peter already addressed there were a lot of questions related to infrastructure, specifically water and sewer, and he addressed that this morning. It was interesting, about a quarter of the participants were interested in a smaller home for themselves. 27% were thinking at some point about downsizing. Homes for employees, families, and seniors add to the community's vibrancy. We heard that, we saw that on the large poster people filled out on the way in, and we saw it on cards. There were some concerns related to design and character, and that the unit should not also, even though design and character was important, some people recognize that that shouldn't make the units more expensive to make them look nice. We want to find some middle ground. There are still ample opportunities for future home construction. That may be true. We're also trying to recognize that you've been really good at land conservation. You have other objectives in the town. It's not to say that housing becomes the only thing you're concerned with. Your master plan does a really nice job of balancing these things. Affordable housing is an important part of the initiative. It's also a state requirement. So there's a state housing law. If we let Mark talk about it, we will lose all of our time this morning. But it's an important thing that the town, the planning board, the housing commission is also trying to be responsible so you don't find yourself being sued. And then must provide opportunities for varied housing alternatives to be constructed. That was one of the big takeaways. And you'll see that in a lot of the materials we're sharing with you today. Okay, so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mark. He's going to go through a little bit about what we know about housing here, and then we're going to get you started.
Good morning. Not surprisingly, most of the homes in New London, 90% are single family. But as Peter alluded to, there's a variety of housing here in the community that you may drive by every day and not even realize it exists. Small starter capes, the way to start with a small family. Duplexes, very well, very nicely done. Main Street, multifamily. From the street, it doesn't look like a multifamily. But when you turn around, there's more units there. New apartments on, off of Main Street. And I will point out that last year, the legislature, as Peter mentioned, there's numerous bills dealing with housing. If you convert an existing structure to multifamily up to 4 units, you no longer have to sprinkle the building. That's a new provision. Sprinkling is very, very expensive, and it was one of the changes made to help entice redevelopment or rebuilding of existing homes, and that's on the books now. Again, density does not have to be ugly, and it doesn't have to be scary. And these are all New London examples. They're not from afar. Conversion of large homes is a big issue, and as I just mentioned, they're much more affordable now in that you don't have to sprinkle them up to 4 units. Phase 2.
So we talked about phase 1. We're clearly in phase 2. What we've done to prepare for what you're going to see today with the Housing Commission is we did a policy and regulatory audit, so it's as boring as it sounds. Mark and I read your master plan, read all your land use regulations, argued with each other about what we were seeing within there and where you were consistent and where there were opportunities for housing barriers or housing opportunities. We then presented that and went through a series of meetings with the Housing Commission. Some of you were at those meetings, and we just talked about it and started to just see ideas come to the surface. Zach, who's sitting in the back here, also, he presented at Forum 1, but he met with us, we did a work session, and we looked at the GIS analysis of your land use pattern and available land to understand what was happening in New London already related to housing and what future opportunities could support. And then through that, the regulatory tools that are before you started to come to the surface, and rather than filter them out or prioritize them with a very small group of people, we're bringing a lot of options to you. You don't need to pursue all these options. We'd like to get feedback on all of them today if possible. But it's really kind of at a 30,000 foot view. Does this make sense? Do I have initial concerns about it? Do I have initial thoughts? And so we have the note takers, and Mark will talk a little bit about this, but we have the note takers there to listen to what you're saying. But if you're having strong opinions, you also have note cards. We'll mention it a few times this morning. You can take the note cards and pens and start writing ideas and questions down at any time. And then we also have a feedback form that's on the website that you can go to, and we'll share the address for that. So what we learned in the process, you have an excellent master plan, and it's pretty recent, 2021, so it was helpful to see that. We did, in 2024, the basis of the first forum was the housing existing conditions analysis, so we were using that as well. And then the forum feedback received from all of you. Overall, what we saw is there's a lot of unison between your master plan and your zoning. So you're not that far off. In some communities, it's like they're speaking different languages. The town's saying, we really want to go in this direction, and the zoning's taking them completely in another direction. But what we did find is there were some disconnects that could be addressed. There were some new housing strategies that could be considered, and that's what's before you. Okay, so what we need is you all to talk with each other and give honest feedback. We're going to give you an introduction. Mark will give you an introduction to the first 4 sets of potential changes. They're just potential changes. There may be additional ideas that come up from any of you. Note takers are here, but they're also participants. They may share ideas as well. And then we want you to remember that even if you were to be excited about a proposal and the commission and the planning board were to bring something to you in the future to vote on, that's about as far as you can take it, unless you are a developer. There's no guarantee that the units will actually be built. So we're just doing what we can now to make the opportunities exist. Okay, now you.
So as we noted earlier, we're not here to do a big presentation. We're here to help you have your discussions at your tables, to look at the ideas that we're putting forth and have a discussion. So I'm going to do a brief outline, as Steve said, about some of the changes, and this is going to be in 2 phases. The first is going to be some zoning changes that we're suggesting, and then we'll be following up with some other ideas in the second phase. So it's going to be a 2-phase event. There's going to be note takers available to listen to what's happening at the table. We'd like to have you spend at least 20 minutes talking amongst yourself about the ideas, and then each table is going to report out for about 10 to 15 minutes. We want to try to stay within that time frame because we have another presentation and then some more discussion, a similar type of review. So, topic 1. And you know, when Steve and I sat down and went over these changes, we were looking at and trying to respond to issues that were raised by the community in your master plan, in the visioning sessions and community outreach that's already occurred. So that's what we used as a basis for these ideas, which sort of drove these recommendations. They deal with changes to the commercial district, the R2 district, the institutional district, and the A&R residential districts. So the first changes have to do with the commercial district and the R1. These include increasing the area of the R1. Also consider allowing multifamily in this area. Removing density requirements, or at least only requiring 4,000 square feet per lot. Also consider form-based code, which was actually mentioned in your master plan, which looks at massing and location of development versus uses specifically. And water conservation, which is an issue in the where area there's no water. The second area is the R2 zone and the shoreline area. We're suggesting creation of a shoreline district specific zoning requirement. This is the R2 now. And we're suggesting creation of a separate zoning area that would remain 2 acres along the shoreline to protect that critical area. We're also suggesting consideration of rezoning the R2 to R1 with 1 acre zoning. There's a significant amount of non-conforming lots in the R2 zone, which is shown on the maps which you have on your table. Give you an idea of the non-conforming lots that exist in that area right now, which are pretty significant. Another suggestion in the R2 is trying to either incentivize cluster, consolidating homes in a smaller area with open space, or make it a mandatory requirement, which some communities in New Hampshire have. This is the R2 with the shoreline district, which would be a separate regulatory area adjoining the lakes. The next zoning area we looked at is the institutional districts, college, hospital. Again, we're considering allowing multifamily in these zones, increasing the height limit from 35 to 45 feet, and possibly expanding the hospital institutional district to allow more opportunities in that area. And then lastly, changes to the agricultural and residential district. Again, in this area, there's significant non-conforming lots. Approximately 66% do not comply with the 4-acre minimum lot area right now. One consideration is reducing that density from 4 acres to 3 or 2. Also, again, looking at just cluster ordinance, either trying to incentivize so that's the norm for development of a cluster type development, or again, making it a mandatory for larger projects that if you're gonna develop in this area, that it has to be an open space plan. We also suggest maybe looking at allowing more than just single family homes and maybe 2-family and accessory dwellings. So those are the ideas we have right now. So what we'd like you to do is take a look at them, talk amongst yourself, come up with thoughts, concerns, issues with your reporting person, and then in about 20 minutes, we'll reach out, see how you're doing, and then we're gonna ask that each table report out your thoughts or issues.
So Neil, would you mind kicking us off and modeling good note taker? And so you're gonna have to actually come up here. I'm gonna surrender the microphone to you so people can hear you.
Good morning. That 20 minutes went super fast, and I think we
Yes.
barely scratched the surface. So I think we'll tack on another 2-3 hours today. So I think a couple things that came up for us is sort of maybe expanding some of the zoning to the institutional areas, like the hospital and sort of the area around Hannaford. To encourage a little bit maybe denser development in that part of town. To really look closely at conservation of water, maybe as a way to help address some of the concerns around the water precinct, although that's a thorny one. And then sort of being very open to the idea of encouraging more multifamily development right in the core of town to have more opportunities for people to downsize, and also places for people to walk so that not everybody has to drive. With a general sense of just wanting more vitality in the center of town and having opportunities not just for very affordable housing for people who are teaching at the school or working at the hospital, but also lovely places for people to maybe downsize so that if they are currently in a 3,000 square foot home and it's maybe 1 or 2 people, they can still stay in town and have opportunities to still live here without all of the maintenance that comes with a single family.
All right, thanks, Neil. All right, so to keep this moving, I'm gonna ask a couple different people to come up. So Nancy can come up, and Mike can come up, and Kim.
Okay, our table was a delightful table, very much in favor of adding additional types of housing. They recognize that the issues that we're having with staffing, both with employees and with the various businesses in the town, are critical. We have noted that people's minds seem to be changing with regard to ADUs and the potential for detached ADUs. And we also discussed expanding families, that when families expand, there should be an opportunity for those people to stay in town, whether it's on the lot that the original house is on or somewhere else. Thank you. So,
always have yin and yang. And this particular group finds it, you can't hear me? I would eat the mic if it was any closer. Can you hear me now? Yes. To coin a phrase? Okay, so it was pretty much the consensus in the group that they find it objectionable that someone from outside of New London comes here to change the town. They feel that they moved here for the way the town is now and don't do anything to change it. And that any change will destroy the town the way that it is. There was some sense that replicating Cottage Lane housing could have some credibility. But they don't want to replicate the Twin Pines proposal for fear of drugs, increases in crime, and other kinds of things. And there was a solid questioning of where is the demand for this type of housing. And that finally most people like the way the things currently are. This is why I went to social work school and learned how to negotiate both sides of a topic. Thank
I would say that probably we're a little bit closer to Kim's conversation. One of our issues is really an understanding of what these things all mean and which location is which, and whether, and then ultimately, are there gaps in the way we have things zoned so that, in fact, we can make some modifications around those and see development there. Accessory dwelling units did come up positively in our group, and so those things were also discussed. But I would say that we're still working on more education than on visioning how it should look.
Charlene, you read my mind. And if we could get Emily to come up.
I do read minds. There was strong consensus in our group about extending the boundaries of R1. Yep. There were some good thoughts about cluster housing, which could include green space, but it has to be in the right place. Increasing and increases the density without feeling like you're cramming things into too small a space. Explore apartments upstairs over the businesses. We think there are some, we just don't know where they are and if they're occupied. One of us was aware that the Upper Valley Regional Planning Commission has resources to help people convert from a single family to a multifamily, and also encouraging the college to just ask the question about, does the college have any space that's either underutilized, like living space that's underutilized, or building acreage for building like cluster housing?
I always say that I don't need a microphone because of my teacher voice, but most of what we talked about has been already brought up. But one good point was that if we are told to do certain requirements by the state, would it be easy for us not to blanket everything, but go through variances individually to make things more accommodating for this town? Not sure. We also were talking about differences in road frontage, whether or not we reduce the size of the lots, including road frontage in a different way, and of course the water and the sewer were prominent as well. So anyway, onward and upward.
We also covered a lot of the things that were said already we have on our list. So I'll just try to minimize what we said. One is the maps don't show environmental factors at all. So do we really know what is out there that could be used and for what purpose? What is the impact of each project? Like if we were to change a zone and minimize it down to let's just say a half acre, making this up. What impact is that on the police, fire, public works? The infrastructure would include internet also. Data for potential demand, it's not current, it's for future demand. Is there any data out there that talks about what the potential demand for rentals and or for purchasing is in this town? Has anybody been able to define affordable? For instance, the income level, what is that income level need to be in our town? And what do we need to make our team work for affordable so that all of our team players here in town could work in town, could live in town? We did not get to all of 4 districts.
That's okay. All right, Tim.
Thanks, I'll be quick, because most of what was said was covered in our group. We talked a lot about form-based zoning and what that would entail. People were curious about if it would allow essentially more nuance for what we have now in our zoning. And that was generally in favor, not everybody, but most people seem to be in favor of exploring that and trying to find a way to, again, be a little bit more differentiated in what we have in our zoning. Not everybody was in favor of increasing the districts, though it seemed like most people were. And another big focus for our group was aesthetics, just making sure that the town continues to be an attractive place while we still try to address a lot of these challenges.
All right, sorry about the microphone. Peter and I are gonna muscle it to the middle of the room when you're working next, and see if we can make it better for those of you on that side that are having trouble hearing. Okay, the feedback received today is super helpful. We know it's not everything, but it's the start of a conversation on these different approaches, and these are just conceptual at this point. For the next exercise, which has been getting handed out, or is already handed out, we're gonna go over some more. And it's not likely that you'll get through all 7 of these in the time you have either, but we want to give you an overview. So some of them have already been talked about in the group discussions. Cottage clusters came up in at least one group discussion. Mark gave a heads up on home conversions. Cluster subdivisions was talked about for a couple of the districts you just looked at, so some of them are not new to you. So cottage courts, just to give you all kind of an overview of the sheets that are in front of you, cottage courts are, it could be a new zoning ordinance that could be developed for New London that would be a way of encouraging a variety of housing choices, including these smaller, clustered together, independent housing units. They would be ideal for infill development in kind of the denser part of the community. It could be an opportunity for redevelopment within established neighborhoods. It's a really efficient use of land, and there's some flexibility in how they can be done. So we wanted to highlight that with the commission. Home conversions were mentioned by Mark earlier. This could be as small as a single-family home becoming a duplex with the addition of another unit. It could also be, some of the examples on here show much larger homes converted to those 1 to 4 without the need for sprinkling that Mark mentioned. So it's trying to provide other opportunities for landowners that may own these homes that want to create condos, individual condos, rental opportunities, or other situations. And it could be regulated at the planning board with a conditional use permit process. The next one is 2-family structures, and we just showed that you have some really nice examples of not all 2-family structures are just the side-by-side approach. They can be stacked, they can be in front and back. We did hear from some folks at one of the commission meetings about having duplexes that had like a breezeway or garages in between, so you have a little bit more privacy. And so allowing or encouraging 2-family structures, both in their configuration and allowing them on a similar size lot is an option. Cluster subdivisions, you have some examples here in the community. This is an opportunity to say in your more rural portions of the town, if single-family homes or duplexes are going to be built in the future, that you really do want to see them clustered together. You can have design parameters for this. We have examples from other communities that incentivize the use of cluster over conditional subdivision or require it. So the town of Jaffrey has required it for a long time. They only have a couple. The town of Barrington has never required it. They have a lot. But they allow for a more efficient use of the land and to get some of your conservation objectives at the same time. Planned unit development, this is something you already have here in the community. We would suggest that you eliminate the 5-acre minimum tract size. It's a little too restrictive. And this would be primarily in areas that are served by water and sewer and could include some bonus provisions. It's a way of starting to think more flexibly about getting units closer together and a mix of units that emulate the patterns that you like most here in the village. Accessory dwelling units. This is a favorite topic in New London. It's something I know has seen some success and some failures. It's also one of the places at the state level that regulations continue or legislation continues to be discussed. So allowing for attached and detached ADUs is still an option for you to consider. Prohibiting the use of ADUs for short-term rentals is something you can consider. And removing the conditional use permit process, allowing an ADU by right is another thing that was highlighted there. And then lastly, workforce housing overlay district. You have this really phenomenal zoning tool that has been developed but has yet to be used. And so we just suggested that there could be a reduction in the identified workforce housing percentage from the 25 to 30%, which we don't believe could be supported because of construction costs and other things. Down to a smaller 5 to 10% of units being specifically for workforce housing. You'll see in there some answers. There were a couple questions that came up, which means that we still have a lot of education to do here in town, which is fine, and that's part of the conversations we're having. But questions about what is affordable in New London, what people make. So some of the figures are appearing here on this sheet, and so that might help remind you of some of the materials from Forum 1. You did an exceptional job in the time you had, so we're going to give you 25 minutes. Will? And get as close to the microphone as you can, or Peter's going to make me push you against the microphone.
Okay, so we had broad support for most things, the cottage courts, home conversions, that sort of stuff. We got into deep discussions about regulations in all of this and an intense need for regulations that we don't currently have the structure to really deal with at this moment in time. And as we increase density, we're increasing the likelihood of issues, so therefore we need somebody to deal with the issues that we don't currently have. Like I said, most of it was broad support. Cluster subdivisions, we like cluster subdivisions, but with perimeters of green space around them, not necessarily. A lot of the ones that are built now went all the way to the edges of the property, and we would rather see more green space in that. And trees and natural surroundings are important. We like the mixed use development very much, and having property and business all together, sort of like a Burlington Church Street or something along those lines, where you've got resident or commercial on the ground and then a couple floors of living above it or something like that, in an attractive way that would work with New London. So that's the basic short version.
All right, our group had some mixed feelings on this, but they do like the cottage. That was very impressive to them. They'd like to know about the sewer in the water, how that's going to affect the infrastructure as well. The 2-family homes, they would like to see that regulated. They, maybe not like it all around town, maybe in a certain area, a planned development maybe. Again, water, sewer, what's the impact? Traffic, stuff like that. For the conversion of homes, they're not really keen on. They were wanting about the traffic, the parking, the character of it. It's very low priority to contractors versus the cottages and stuff like that. We didn't really get too far in the cluster, and there we only got to these 3, so that's pretty much what they had for their points that they'd like to share. Our table was consistent with some of what it said, so I'll highlight the differences. Overwhelmingly, we like the cottage courts the best. The home conversion, we were not, did not have consensus on and would be concerned about impact on neighbors and the need for extensive regulation. Two-family structures we're supportive of, and we were recommending, here's something different, that we do some research on anaerobic systems for septic because they don't require as much land. So that's something different. We like the idea of cluster subdivisions and referenced Highland Ridge and Hilltop as successful examples in New London. We were a little mixed on the planned unit developments and really kind of like what's the difference between that. Apparently they can be also for commercial use, but we don't want things that look like they're city housing versus village housing. Accessory dwelling units we're generally very supportive of, with the exception of no short-term rentals. And we are referencing the need for housing for what we call professionals, like teachers who make a starting salary of $40,000 a year. And we support that. We have housing for those professionals and need to figure out a way to make that happen. That's all we got.
So we had a pretty good discussion. People were, like the other groups, very much in favor of cottage courts. Generally thought they were attractive and a good model. Home conversions seemed to be a hit as well. Like the idea that it was repurposing and recycling structures. Had concerns about the same stuff other people have said, you know, traffic, sewers, loads on lakes, things like that. Two-family was also generally well received. Somebody made the point that New England towns have been evolving for the last 400 years in terms of how they use structures, so that this is a continuation of that. And then zoning should be mindful of, you know, form and appearance, things like that. What else? We didn't really get to PUDs too much, other than just to make the point that zoning is kind of a means to an end. Clusters, people were generally in favor of that, more so than traditional lots where all the homes are spread out. And also there were concerns and discussions around maintaining price diversity and how do we keep things affordable. And then lastly, people were generally in favor of ADUs, particularly for seniors aging into them, and then also for younger people starting out. I think that's it. Thank you.
I might be the only one that has come back because we didn't discuss any specific designs. We discussed more what can the town do to incentivize, and what do we know about where we could incentivize actual structures being put, i.e., is there aquifers, is there places that can take large septic systems, and possibly what we need to do is the town engage I don't know what kind of engineer that is called, but engage someone, possibly with the help of UNH or Colby, to start locating some of these. So the essence was the cart's before the horse at this point, because we need to know more information about the land that could be buildable and how much it could support for these bigger developments.
These are just a couple of general comments that our group felt strongly that any of these 7 ideas can be done aesthetically and consistent with New London's village style. So rather than framing any of them as it won't work here, we really think they could work here if done well, and that there is a zoning and planning process in New London that works. And also underlining the fact that the demand for this housing is now. It's not in the future. This is about, I think as Ann just said, this is about teachers. This is about people that the hospital is trying to attract here. This is about people the college would like to have live here and work here. This is now not about sometime in the future. It's about needs that exist now.
I would say that we are in accord with most of what's been said here, and that is that all 7 of these options look good. A good part of it is, and I'm realizing that my concern has been about the rural character, the appearance of the town, which everybody does also agree with. But a part of that character is the houses themselves are aesthetic for the most part in New London, and that's a consideration. And if everything that was developed on this list looked like it does on these pages, then I think that would be great. But it gets back to the questions raised about regulations and about zoning and how do you make sure that things would come out the way that they look here. And that would be, a very likely, that would be a positive outcome. I told the table that I understand that in Denmark, if you want to change the color of the paint on your house, you have to get permission from the people across the street who are looking at it. And so that's a suggestion for the ZBA.
Thank you. Thank you for your openness. You're willing to share ideas, listen to people who don't agree with you, and have a debate. This is what we need in our town, and that's our job, is to collect your thoughts and build something that might work and have you perhaps vote on it in a year's time. So I would ask that you keep participating, talk with your friends and neighbors, that you use our webpage. We have a webpage called Paths Home. It's that logo right there, and it's on the town webpage. Go on Housing Commission, Paths Home logo, and it'll take you these materials, including a recording of this event. And also, you can use the feedback form that's on our webpage. There's a form that you can leave it, and we read those, and we do our best to answer them as we can. Lastly, I would say stay for a minute if you'd like to review some of the boards that we have from the prior meeting, have some coffee, donuts, and share the time with friends. Thanks very much.